Tobias. And hopefully the Temple City Star will show up. And welcome to Corey. And beautiful weather, a little bit breezier than we like. What was it, Sunday? It's a beautiful day on Sunday. And then the wind came up like the dickens.
Last Friday,
You go to good news too.
It'll be a nice rainy long weekend.
I'm going to water day. I don't care.
It's windy and weather's all the time.
For the trailer.
To me, it seems that they got the going to
Water day.
It's like anything.
Not sure my house.
Well, we make them here on at that price. No, no, but that's what you should.
Your microphones are on, gentlemen. And ladies.
Yeah.
Ladies.
You know what?
Let's talk about it. I have those for you, so
Thank
we can
you.
talk about it.
Perfect.
Moving in mind, Councillor.
Well, it's a beautiful Tuesday afternoon. I'd like to welcome council here for our regular council meeting here on the 14th of May. I'd like to welcome the gallery, Diane Herrick from Alzheimer's Foundation. Tobias Terrell is involved in the project that we'll hear about in just a minute. And Mr. Peterson and Mr. McCarthy, welcome. We always enjoy the media coverage. And so my wife heard me talking the other day, and she was quite surprised when I'm talking to myself. She came in again, and she just heard my voice on YouTube. It was one of these council proceedings, and she thought I was talking to myself, or maybe talking on the phone or something like that. So, Councillor Creed, you have the honors tonight. If you would invoke the Spirit to lead us.
Our Father in heaven, we're grateful to be gathered together for our council meeting this day. We're grateful for the opportunity to serve our community. We pray for thy blessings upon this community and upon all the people that are in the community, and especially pray that thou would be mindful of those who are struggling with problems which may be health or otherwise, that they may be blessed with those things that they are in need of, that our community may prosper, and that there may be a spirit of goodwill among all of the people in this town. Help us to be good facilitators, to be able to help the people in this community to achieve their desires for a better community. And pray that as we conduct this council meeting this evening, that our decisions will
over on category number 12, under confidential, we have a second land issue that we will deal with. I don't think there's anything else by way of addition. So I'll call for a motion to approve and adopt the agenda with that one addition. Councillor Dahl so moves. Any discussion, council, on that motion to adopt the agenda with one addition? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Agenda is hereby adopted with that one. We will go right into our delegation, and again, we'd like to welcome Tobias Terrell, who is with the Investment Group, and Diane Herrick of the Alzheimer's Society, and again, welcome. And I'm guessing you probably need, what, maybe 5, 6, 7 minutes, and then allow some time for Q&A.
Sure, that would be fine, yeah. So thank you, Mayor Schow, for the introduction there. Mayor Schow, council members, my name is Tobias Terrell. I'm from in and around Cardston, though I don't live in Cardston directly. Many of you may know me as being part of many other nonprofit organizations in town. But I'm here today to speak to you about the Alzheimer's Memory Walk that we're going to be holding on Saturday, June 22nd. So a bit of a background for you. My grandmother passed away a year ago this past January. She suffered from dementia. And after that, I really found myself wanting to get to know a little bit more about the disease and so on and so forth. Fortunately, I was able to get involved with the Alzheimer's Memory Walk in Lethbridge, and that was held approximately a year ago. And what an organization I found, what a tremendous organization. This is an amazing group of people. It's an amazing group, an amazing thing that they do for the community, getting involved, supporting caregivers and everything else. And so I found myself really wanting to get involved. I was contacted earlier this year by the Alzheimer's Society, by Diane, who had asked me to see about doing a memory walk in Cardston. And so I gladly accepted and said that this is something that we really need to take a look at. Diane Herrick is here, and Diane, maybe if you wouldn't mind just telling a brief little bit about the Alzheimer's Society and Alzheimer's in general.
Sure. I've worked for the Alzheimer's Society for a year now, and I have to say I've worked in several different organizations, and this has been the best one that I've ever worked with. It's nice to see that the money that we raise goes directly to the client services and also to research. So the money from this walk will go to help the clients in the Southern Alberta area. So it stays in Southern Alberta, and it's here to help your people. So some of the things we do for your community is we provide phone support. So if somebody's newly diagnosed or is having trouble, they can phone us and we can offer them support, referrals to gerontologists or anybody else that they need for services. We also have support groups. We have one in Taylor, one in Lethbridge. We're hoping to get one started here in Cardston. And then we also mail out information packages. So if you need some information on the disease, on the society, on anything, we can send you out a package as well. All this costs money. It costs a lot of money, especially when we're an hour away. Driving to your town, it works out to about $200 once we have all our costs and everything per trip. But it's more important that we come and we serve the people in your community than well, the dollars are important, but it's more important that your community is getting the services that they need. And especially Cardston is more of a retirement community. Am I right? We have a lot of clients in your area, actually. And the walk is going to benefit in a couple of different ways, not only financially, but also awareness. We want everybody in your area to know that if their lives are touched with Alzheimer's, that we're there to serve them and to help them, even though we are an hour away, or 45 minutes or whatever. And that we do come out to your community, and we want to make a presence here so that people know that they're not alone, that we're here to help them through their struggles. So that's what we do.
So the walk that we have planned, as I say, is taking place on Saturday, June 22nd at Lions Park here in Cardston. The plan is to actually, registration's at 10, walk will start at 11. We're hoping to have some dignitaries there. We have confirmation from MLA Gary Bickman, who will be there. We'd like to have somebody representing the town of Cardston, whether it be the mayor or another council member, there to say a few words. So that's something that we're here asking for today. Once that's all completed, the walk will continue on. We're actually going to go down the park, or those bike paths, down to the bridge and then back. So it's a very short walk. There's going to be some fun and games that we're going to play along the way. So there's a little phrase that you're going to have to memorize as they go around. Fun little things like that. When we return to Lions Park, we will have some food, some hot dogs and things like that. That's going to be done by the Lions Club themselves. So that's a great addition, and we greatly appreciate their support on that. Yeah, and so we'll have a little bit of entertainment and things like that. Now, in terms of the cost, we have, renting Lions Park, we are renting that. There's a cost associated with that. There's tables and chairs and things like that that we are renting from you at the town here. And so we're here, asking for a little bit of a break or reduction on some of that, if not an altogether reduction. This is, of course, a fundraiser for Alzheimer's Society, so we would greatly appreciate that. Yeah, that's basically it. If any of you would like to, in front of you there is some pamphlets. The first one is talking about all the different programs that the Alzheimer's Society does have going on. Aside from the memory walk, and not what's in there, is some other fundraising events that they do throughout the year, such as the Hearts for Arts Alzheimer's thing that they do in January, no, April.
March 1st.
March 1st, there you go. Which is also an amazing event, and then there's a few other things throughout the year. They've got a golf tournament coming up in July,
Book sale
book sale, and a few other things.
coffee break.
And as well, there's a pamphlet there that actually has the pledge form inside for the walk. So if you or family members that you know are touched by Alzheimer's and you would like to do something there, you can sign up. Cost is $15. And there's some good things that come along with that, free t-shirts and water bottles and all that kind of stuff. We also have another fundraiser that if you're walking for somebody, you can either purchase, or if you raise enough money, $500 worth, you can actually get one of these flags. And so it says, I walk for, and in my case, of course, mine's going to say my grandmother, Elsie Pryor. And so you can carry that. There's card ones that we have and stuff like that, or people can purchase these for $5. So there's a few different things we've got for fundraisers. The whole ultimate goal is we want to raise $5,000 on this initial one for Cardston. We want to raise that $5,000 for the Alzheimer's Society, and so with your help, I think we can do that. And so with that, I'll maybe open it up for questions.
Councillor Kronen.
Thank you for your presentation. I realize the cause is a very important cause, especially in our town. The question I had when I read the letter, something hit me, and I was trying to understand the connection between the Alzheimer's Society and Utopias with your business just below it. It kind of struck me as funny.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking, okay, are you using the Alzheimer's Society to profit your organization? Can you please explain a little bit what you're doing? You didn't do it as a citizen. You did it as someone who has a business. So I'm trying to understand the connection.
Well, I'm both. In this particular instance, I'm doing this walking and doing what I'm doing, for my grandmother. But I also work for Investors Group. Investors Group is the title sponsor for the Alzheimer's Memory Walk across Alberta and Northwest Territories.
Okay, so that's what I needed to know.
So that's really all there is for a connection there, is that they paid a lot of money for that. I'm putting a lot of sweat equity rather than paying a lot of money. So,
Yeah, I needed to know what was the connection between the two.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Because you asked for a donation, and I was thinking, okay, but it's sponsored by a business, so I was thinking, yet you come for a donation request. I was thinking, okay, how does that play out?
The request is coming from the Alzheimer's Society, not from the Investors Group.
So if I could, Tobias, and Diane, is this an event that has reach across southwestern Alberta? Will we see folks coming in from Lethbridge or wherever to participate, or is it pretty much localized?
Well, there is existing walks already being done, in previous years in Lethbridge, Medicine Hat, Calgary, Red Deer, Edmonton, and North. This year, the hope is that they can grow and have some rural ones. So they've added Blairmore, for example, and Cardston. Those are the two that have been added for this year. So we potentially could see people here, and we are, we've got posters and things like that. Those are going up all over southern Alberta, McGrath. There are people in Pincher Creek that are being, touched on this and aware of the walk here. The hope that we're trying to draw is we're trying to draw people in for the memory walk here, for their relatives. So if they've got a relative tie-in here, grandmother or parents or somebody who lives here, that we want them to come down, participate in the walk, have a family fun event, do some good at the same time, create some awareness.
And while they're in town, shop.
And while they're in town, shop.
I'm prepared to make that commitment to be there on behalf of council that morning. I think my schedule is free, so I want to make sure that I write that down. I think it's fair to say that more and more people's lives are being touched by Alzheimer's.
And it's going to get worse. Right now, they figure that the increase is going to be 70% in the next 10 to 20 years. That it is a disease that is expanding. There's more and more people that are living to be the age of 100 and plus, right? And plus, people are being diagnosed earlier. For example, we have a 40-year-old who has small children that has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And she forgets to pick up her children from school and things like that. And it's just devastating for that family and for her caregivers and her family around her, right?
Well, it is certainly a quality of life issue. I think we all know people who have a family member, and so it impacts families and so forth. I think it probably makes sense to go right down to 6C, and the chair will entertain a motion, which we will discuss. The chair will entertain a motion for a waiver of the fees for McDonald Park and table from the chair. Councillor Court moves that we waive the fees for that event. Just let me just go over, as I went over with Jeff prior to the meeting today, I believe it's fair to say that in virtually every aspect of our donation waiver policy, I think it does meet, but again, that's my opinion. And so I would appreciate and value any comments from the council table, your thoughts on that motion.
I mean, if I can, essentially, our donation policy is to benefit people who live in our town for our town. And I think just this criteria alone would qualify the request for donation.
Well, and you see, I talked to Jeff, and I'm well aware that it is in advance by 30 days. We'd like to see that 30-day advance notice.
The timeline is not there.
So that we're not hit late in the game. I think it is, I mean, it's nice to see a corporate endorsement. In most situations, corporations will step up to the plate and become the title sponsor for this or any other event. And I did ask Jeff, are we out of pocket any dollars, having to provide any support for this, any labor, any maintenance of the facility, and if there is, it's negligible. So I will call a question on Councillor Court's motion to waive the rental fee for the park on the 22nd of June. All in favor? I will not call for any opposed because it looked like it was unanimous. Thank you very much, and hopefully you'll get some great response in the community, and it'll be just a terrific event.
Thank you. Can I just clarify that on the front of the brochure it says June 15th, but that's because that's where the walk is being held across the province, except for Cardston, because you have another commitment that day. So if you'll see in the little where it describes the different walk locations, it is June 27th.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you, Council.
This was in
Sorry?
this was in the time limit.
Yeah, it is.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if I could have a motion for adoption of the council minutes for the April 23rd meeting, moved by Councillor Kronen. Any comments on the motion? Any questions or comments about the minutes? Seeing none, I'll call that question. All in favor? The minutes are adopted by a motion of council. Now, the category number 6, recommendations from the council committee of the whole meeting. We had an excellent pool presentation from the group that's been recommended by committee of the whole, and upon motion of committee of the whole to recommend, the chair will honor a motion to accept the Acapulco rules, and it is moved by Councillor Dahl. Any questions or comments? Okay, all in favor? Adopted. Support for the Handicap Association. They're asking for some support to the province to address the cut in funding. Council Committee of the Whole has by resolution recommended that we adopt that. Apologize for that. Councillor Smith moves that we make that recommendation in support, that we support the seniors. Questions and comments? Councillor Cummings.
Just like to bring it to our attention that not only from the community levy, but they've also suggested individually, and I'd just like to make that recommendation to all those present that we support that individually as well as a community for those that would like to yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. I guess I'm all signed. All in favor of that motion? Thank you. Motion carries. Now, we need two motions under 2A3. We need a motion to approve the mill rate, and then we need a motion regarding the amortization budget.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just clarify, we need, in this part, and Noel may want to speak to, holy smokes, that microphone's loud. Noel may want to speak to this just a bit. We need a motion to accept the budget for the mill rate, which is what you saw and reviewed last week. But one thing we didn't review, and I put in front of you, it's this big long budget document, is we also need to approve a budget containing amortization. So we don't include that in the mill rate budget, or we would tax on amortization, which is $1.8 million.
Yes.
So we actually have two separate motions to approve two separate budgets.
Okay, so
Does that hit it, Noel? Or do you want to speak to anything there?
Yes, the budget, mill rate bylaw, and
Budget with amendment.
well, can be budget include, so there'll be three on that.
Yes.
Yeah, well, the mill rate
With the-
bylaw is
with the
next.
bylaw,
Is the
okay.
next item.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the budget as presented.
So could I have a motion to accept the budget containing the mill rate?
Yeah, the budget for the purposes of mill rate.
Councillor Kronen so moves. Discussion on that, and did you want to speak to that, Noel?
No, I can
No,
just
okay.
answer questions if there's any questions
So,
on that.
so we have a motion to accept the budget as presented, which gives us the proposed mill rate that we've recommended from the committee of the whole. Any discussion on that motion? I'll call that question on favor. Thank you very much. Now comes the one that's a separate budget regarding the amortization. And that's something you're going to speak to
Now,
about?
Jeff, did they need to-
Yes, they have
Okay.
this, yes.
That second budget, I've highlighted the amortization amounts there, and the total is the $1,856,266 total, adding amortization in, but like Jeff said, that's a non-cash. I've got a note there at the back of that non-cash, and so we just need that approved for audit purposes.
Which is this one.
Okay, so any, and we got, Councillor Creed moves approval of the amortization budget.
But we need a third motion for the new.
We will deal with that as a separate bylaw here right after.
Separate bylaw.
Yeah.
Okay, so any discussion on that motion for approval of the amortization budget? I'm seeing now, I'll call the question on favor. Carries, thank you very much.
I think essentially what we need to remember, that purpose was for the audit. It was a request by the auditors
Yes.
to have a separate document reflecting
Right.
the
At the end of
amortization.
the 2011 year, they requested that, so we had this last year for the
Yes.
first time, and then this year again.
Right,
So that when they add amortization in at year end, that it matches what they
Right.
show.
because they are reporting with the amortization,
Yes,
while we're not required to.
right.
Okay, item number 6A4 is bylaw 1620, We can call for 3 readings. That is the mill rate bylaw, so I would like to call for a motion. Councillor Edmonds moves.
I'll move first reading of bylaw 1620.
That being the mill rate bylaw. Any discussion on the first reading? All in favor? Councillor Smith moves second reading. All in favor of second reading? Permission for third reading. Councillor Dahl moves permission for third reading. All in favor? Okay, that's unanimous. I'll call for a motion for third reading. Councillor Creed moves third reading. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Council. Now, 6A5 is 1559C. That adjustment to the West Area Structure Plan Amendment. We need first reading on that, and eventually we will proceed, I believe, on the 28th of this month to a public open house. Councillor Kronen moves first reading of bylaw 1559C, the requested change to the West Area Structure Plan. Any discussion on the motion by Councillor Kronen? Councillor Dahl.
When I look at this, I wonder if we want to take out the laneway that they're suggesting that we do. Whether that do future development in that area.
And I was kind of asking the same question. Is there a downside in there? And as you obviously know, by going to public open house, we'll be able to have input, citizen input on that. But certainly, we want to be informed here at the council table. And so I simply asked the question, is there a downside?
Is it necessary?
For them to build it, if you're bang on. So again, my question is, what would be the downside to granting their request to build and to remove the laneway? Councillor Kronen and Councillor
It
Court.
seems to me that I talked to Marian regarding that, and I was asking exactly the same question that you're asking. It appears to me that the signs would now be sitting somewhere as if on 2 lots, which is the reason for the removal of the laneway. So if the house sits that way, how can you build anything behind it? I don't see how it's possible. And with the approval of the neighbor who feels satisfied with the removal of the lane, I think we should be all right to have at least a first reading and then let the public decide. If they don't want it, they have the chance to come and talk to us about it.
I guess I'm more comfortable with having the public open house after the first reading and then after second reading.
Yes.
Because there's the sentiment that can creep out there, well, it's a done deal, we had 2 readings on it.
No, I think you're very wise.
We maybe, if something needs to be tweaked, or obviously some information needs to go out. Councillor?
I wasn't here last week, but I did pick up the minutes of the count of the meeting last week, the next day. Could you just tell me where we're dealing with the area?
Straight
do you
north
have-
of you.
Yes, straight north of me.
Do you have this drawing?
I do not. All I got was the
It
minutes.
should be in
In
your
your
packet for
packet,
today.
it is in your packet
Oh,
today.
it is.
It's in your packet.
All right, today.
Yeah.
Right.
And it appears to be page 6B.
I also asked administration what is the purpose of the lane. My question was because I was concerned of a similar issue on the east end, but that was already a lane that had been designated for a specific purpose. In this case, the lane is planned, but there was no development approved at that point, and therefore it is not in a plan at all. So it's a different situation. My concerns were there too, for exactly the same reason. Is there in certain part of town where lanes are required, in other place where we would do without, and why?
Well, exactly, those are good questions. At this point in time, I'm not seeing from my perspective, why we would need to stand in the way. Councillor Smith?
I was going to say, sorry, did we move first reading?
No, we're going to call
we're
voting.
discussing.
I'll move first.
The motion's on the table.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry,
Okay,
Councillor.
sorry.
I'm-
Oh, did you? Okay,
I'm sorry, first reading has been moved.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is just
So I haven't
discussion.
voted.
Okay.
And we'll call the
Yeah,
question
I'll
as soon
do
as
the
we
first reading.
give them a chance to speak to it. Any further comments or questions on this? Jeff, from administration point of view, and do you have any thoughts in terms of what downside do you see, if any?
What I would propose is at the public hearing that we have the landowner speak to the impact of it, because ultimately it's their land to try and sell if it's a detriment to selling the land. The interesting piece in this is we have a sole landholder of the whole development area. So they hold their own fate in their hands if they remove the land and it's not something that potential future purchasers would want. But they're the landholder. So hearing what I have around the table, I made a note that this piece about consequence of removing the lane, we'll make sure we have some information prepared for council at the public hearing before any more readings go forward.
So that will comprise, that public hearing will comprise a segment of the council meeting in 2 weeks, right?
Graham, did we advertise that for the 28th? Sorry, Your Worship, if I could. Yeah, I believe the public hearing is advertised for 2 weeks.
Which, you know, that's actually a good amount of time. 2 weeks is lots of time. Okay, I will call the question. All in favor of first reading as has been moved? Carries. Thank you very much. Jeff?
If I could, Mr. Mayor, if we could jump, if it's okay with the council, to 7A. While Noelle's here, I wouldn't mind if she could speak to the reserve list motion that's required. She can speak to it far better than I could, and she happens to be in the room, so.
Yes, and that means we don't need to keep her any longer.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I would appreciate
Thank you,
that.
Jeff. So, council, we will move to item 7A, where we need a motion for the County Code Reserve List. And
The reserve list, as you can see there, ended, this is for December 31st, 2012, at 1.968 million, 746. And that was to do with audit at the end of the year. This balance is out to what our audit ended with. And just to cover, I think Marian may have touched on this a bit in committee meeting, but the use of reserves in this budget will reduce that to just under 1.4 million with the use of reserves with this budget, with the 2013 budget. But the motion is just required to approve the reserve list as of December 31st, 2012.
any questions? If not, I'll call for a motion, and then we can have further discussion. Do you want to move?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, Councillor Dahl so moves. Do you have some comments, Councillor Dahl?
I have a question. Under recreation, Noel, you've got facility, which doesn't mean anything. It's nearly $500,000. What is that?
It's just for recreation facilities. We are utilizing that money. We've been putting money away each year just for rec facility. And that is part of the motion on the capitalization policy that we put away every year. We put away $53,500 each year for facility. And like I said, it can be ice rink, it can be pool. We are going to be using a good share of that in 2013 for the pool construction. But it is just for recreation facility in general.
Any further comments or questions on the motion from Councillor Dahl? I'm seeing none. I'll call that question. All in favor? Carries. Thank you very much. Thank you, Noel. So, Noel, just for the sake of council, when do you start working on the 2013 financials?
For year end?
For year end?
Well, we have, we're working, we do it throughout the year, but
Never ends.
for year end, yeah. We
Never
start
ends.
prior
Thank
to
you.
year end, yeah.
Thank you for everything you do in this financial gathering.
I also want to back you up on this one and really want to thank Noel for all the hard work you put towards this budget. really, we did very little tweaking to it. And when we really came down to cut down $250,000 due to MSI dropping and education requisition coming up, you really did your job for us, and thank you so much. And thanks to all the
It takes all
head of
us to-
department that helped you with that too. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll go back up. That leaves us at 6A6, South Water Users Co-op, and we're going to need a motion to approve in principle. Jeff will give us a little bit of background on this one.
I'm sorry, I was just responding to a message from Tara downstairs there. So this is, we had this discussion at CCW. The county has drafted a new arrangement with the water co-op. However, there were some concerns by council that we wanted to make sure that consumption needs align with what we have in town. So the motion that came out of CCW in your background is that you agree to amendments to the agreement as proposed, but that administration needs to address the consumption to align with in-town use as part of the amendment. So that's all still on the table and something we need to do as we go forward. But this still comes forward from CCW as a motion to approve in principle.
Yeah.
Councillor
I
Kronen.
would be ready to put that motion, that was a recommendation I had made. So I would put that motion with exactly the same reservation in it for administration to carry on discussion with the county and try to see how we can improve,
Well, yes.
reduce our consumption.
And yes. I agree with that wholeheartedly. So Councillor Kronen moves in principle the amendment to the Water Users Co-op Agreement. Any further discussion on that? Because we do need to encourage conservation, and we do need to bring their fees in line with what we're charging here within the town limits as well. Any discussion on that? I'll call a question. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you for that motion, Councillor Kronen. We had the recommendation of Councillors Kronen and Edmonds to be the council representatives on the Municipal Development Plan Committee. And that comes by way of recommendation from Committee of the Whole. And we'll take a motion on that, moved by Councillor Creed. Any discussion on that motion?
Do we have a set time when this thing's going to be by?
Jeff is going like this, so that means no.
It's very open-ended.
I thought you were going to ask who was buying all the meals every time you meet. Don't plan on any budget. Don't plan on any budget at all. You probably get water.
And that's not bad.
So is the committee being formed yet?
The committee has been suggested. Are we at liberty to put those names forward or not?
Graham, did we contact those citizens of large yet and tell them it was a done deal?
Okay.
Probably not just yet. We'll
We won't go
formalize
that
here.
far.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll call for that motion that Councillors Kronen and Edmonds be the council representatives on that committee.
Councillor Creed.
Councillor Creed moved it, yes, sorry. I'll call for the vote, that's what I meant to say, thank you. All in favor? Yes, I didn't mean to say vote, I think I've done all signers.
Walk for you.
How much do I owe you?
We better walk with them. And get lost with them.
If I remember.
We walked right into that one.
I know. Okay, so 6B. Jeff, would you like to speak to this? We've got some touchy issues here. And we need some good background, some direction, some clarification.
So council had a presentation from Mr. Atkins last meeting. I just want to bring a couple of pieces of information to council's attention because I think what we'd like to, if council so chooses, I'd like to come out of this meeting with a motion that council is either going to review the investment policy on the electrical side, or I guess reviews the wrong word, create an investment policy on the electrical side, and or give concessions on infrastructure installation, i.e. water looping. So if I could just speak to a couple of those things, and I'll try and be quite concise. There's two main issues brought up by Mr. Atkins that he had concerns with. The first being that he didn't feel it was appropriate, he should have to invest to put in the electrical infrastructure to turn it over to the utility. The monopoly was his term, which, okay. The second concern he had was the requirement that we were asking him to loop the water system, which essentially means that instead of just running a line to dead end in the development, we want it to connect into a line somewhere else so that that water's constantly moving. So I want to point out two items, one being a letter from Albert Tago at Associated, who we asked to comment, and the other is the development agreement that Mr. Atkins has signed August 27th, 2011. In that, in Schedule D, number 2, the developer shall be responsible for the provision of electrical power service, natural gas service, telephone service, water, sewer, and sanitary sewer to each parcel within the development area. So this notion, as much as I can understand where he's coming from, it is not a new one. This was agreed to in 2011 in the development agreement, and discussed even earlier than that. This was just when we finally penned the agreement. So the notion that the negotiations with Fortis were complicating matters and things like that, I'm not sure that it bears out that the development agreement was signed long before that. So consider that on the electrical piece. On the water looping piece, there's a couple of concerns I wanted to read from Mr. Tago at Associated. Obviously, having to loop the water line comes with a cost, and nobody is debating that. Everybody agrees that that is the case. But there are legitimate concerns for not looping a line. Now, we have lines within town now that due to historical construction don't have the flow that we like, and we do flush those. We use hydrants. This one right here is one of them. It happens to end there. And so we flush it a couple of times a year, and we document that and we monitor it. We have a requirement in the town to have a safe chlorine level in the water from the plant to the tap, wherever that tap may be. The concern of an unlooped line is that that water may sit stagnant within the line because it has low use for a long period of time, and when it gets to the end user, does not have an appropriate level of bacteria and cleaning agent in it. So I'll take some verbatim from Mr. Tago's letter. The main concern we have with an unlooped distribution main is the ability to maintain chlorine residuals that meet safe and quality drinking water standards. He says the best way to avoid this in practice is looping that water distribution system and shorten what they call the residence time of water in pipelines. This is a maintenance-free option that is required by cities, towns, and municipalities with some exceptions. The rate of development and occupancy has to be considered in order to ascertain the retention time of water in the pipe. So he offers a couple of solutions aside from looping. He says if the solution is to install a flushing hydrant at the end of the pipe main, there must be a carefully monitored flushing program in order to maintain the required chlorine residual. This is additional maintenance for the town. Or an automated blowout flushing system can be installed at the pipe end to continually discharge at flow rates designed to keep the water in the pipe main fresh. I have two concerns with both of these options. With the flushing options, we can't just go fire open a hydrant into the creek. That's not okay. So we have to store, or at least hold this water we're flushing somewhere, until the chlorine levels are down enough that we can discharge it into the creek. It's not as simple as turning on the valve and letting it run all day. It's simply not that easy. It's not that easy for us to do the maintenance. It's not that easy for Mr. Atkins to do that maintenance. You can't just fire open a hydrant and let it shoot into the creek. You can't. The second piece is an automated system would continually discharge water if it wasn't flowing enough, but you waste an excessive amount of water. You're continually just blowing water out the end of the line to somewhere. Again, it can't just blow out into the creek. It must go into a holding area. And so they're options, and they're hurdles that can be mitigated, I think. You know, properly engineered and whatever, I'm sure they can be mitigated, but you know, Albert Tago's saying he's not sure that mitigation is any easier than just looping the system. And that would make sure that water is moving into other areas. So I just wanted to bring those two items to council's attention when discussing whether you want to look at changing the investment policy of the electrical or allowing, I don't want to call it substandard or inferior because it can be engineered, but allowing a different water system than conventional looping. Those are the two items.
Okay, so Jim, are we giving you direction then to proceed as a decision of council?
If council chooses, and maybe you want further debate or discussion, but you could choose to either hold firm on the development agreement and the responsibility for electrical infrastructure installation. I think that's a fairly black and white issue that could be debated fairly easily one way or another. On the water looping piece, I mean, there are options, and it may just be that the design, like it says in the development agreement, must meet the approval of the CAO. I didn't mention that, I'm sorry, I mentioned that to the mayor earlier and thinking I mentioned it here. Later in the development agreement, it basically says all the infrastructure design must be submitted to the town and approved by the CAO. Marian isn't comfortable approving a dead-end water line because of these reasons. So those are the couple of questions. Does council wish for us to entertain different variations on the water line? And do you wish to make any different change on the electrical installation?
Okay, so no motion of any kind, everything stands as is.
Would denote status quo, yes.
All right. Any
On the
comments or
water
questions?
and on the electrical?
Yes.
Right now, it is how it stands in the development agreement that he must install that, and he must install the water to the satisfaction of the CAO.
And the satisfaction was the looping as was recommended
Right
as
now, that's the
engineer?
recommendation from the engineer.
That was engineer, okay,
Yeah.
thank
Councillor
you.
Smith.
Once the water line infrastructure is put in there, what would be the cost to actually do the looping back into the line, or do we know?
I can't answer that for you right now on the spot. That potentially could be answered, and I could bring it back to council. I can't answer that for you on the spot. And one of the reasons is, councillors, we haven't done a lot of work into the costing of the utility installation because right now the onus is on Mr. Atkins. to do
As
the
per
utility
the-
installation.
Well, that's what I was just wondering, once the line's in there. I mean,
Right.
if there's some way that maybe the cost can be shared to, to loop that line, or where does when we flush our lines out here, where does the water go? Does
Right
go
now, it
down
runs
the
down
same
the curb, into the storm, and into the creek. But that's because that's how it was installed historically. You can't do that going forward. So all this internal
storm
stormwater,
water is coming out of it, it still can't go into the creek.
I mean, it's traveling a ways.
Yeah.
It's traveling a little ways. It's going from wherever it is
Washington.
to the creek. But, yeah, that wouldn't be acceptable in new development.
Kind of grandfathered.
Yeah, you can't go putting in ponds somewhere in this block anymore. You're occupied. So,
Councillor Dahl.
We've got a signed agreement, it was signed in 2011. If that's a complete agreement, except for the looping of the water line, I think we should stand by the agreement that has been signed by both parties in good faith.
But the water line looping was
Now,
part of it.
the water line looping is a different problem.
It was part of the original agreement.
The original agreement specifies satisfaction of the CAO, right?
yeah, it specifies the infrastructure must be designed to the satisfaction of the town, essentially.
So let's stand by that agreement.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Pete.
Jeff, if I could ask you a question on, it seems that Stratton's had some other issues as far as routing the line. You talked about the routing the sewer lines and things like that. How is that addressed, and is that something that we need to talk about? The routing of where those lines come from and where they go to.
I didn't prepare anything for that specifically here, just because I think, well, Albert and Marian are still open to design options for either of those ways. Mr. Atkins talked about being able to come down 7th potentially and not having to cross the creek, and I think there's some wisdom in some of those if it's designed correctly. If it can be shown that it can be, for the sanitary, that it can be evacuated properly and that the water can be looped properly, then I don't think route is as big an issue as just making sure that we have appropriate water movement in that line.
So those are still open for discussion, but we don't have to really talk about those at this time, is what you're saying? Okay.
I think so. If I could, for an example, this is in the development agreement. It talks about, this is a covenant of the developer. Okay, it's under section 2. And the developer agrees and has provided to the CAO the plans and specifications in the form and in such details required by the CAO, including but not limited to Approved plans of subdivision, easement agreements, approved land use plans, approved plans and construction specifications for all improvements, architectural controls, design controls with direct control conditions, and the works to be performed in the development area. So that was one of the covenants, that they would provide the plans for all the infrastructure improvements and works that would be done down there. And that all of the plans and specifications shall have been approved in writing by the municipal engineer, which in this case we've retained Associated Engineering to do that. So those are kind of the pieces it's hinging on, that Albert Tago is saying, I'm not comfortable with this design. Yes, you could do it, but the town's going to inherit some liability potentially down the road if we're now responsible to make sure the chlorine levels at the end of that line every day are suitable. Because we inherit that infrastructure in a year. So if council is willing to inherit that and we can manage it, I'm not saying we can't, but is it necessary for us to inherit that and manage it?
And there's some very serious ramifications on the sewer side as well. You got a comment, Councillor Dahl?
I said, what's the cost?
Well, and again, depending on how in-depth we had to manage it. For example, now, our guys go around town, I want to say weekly, and have specific spots throughout town. They take the water, test the chlorine levels at all these different spots. This would add to it, but we'd be particularly concerned about an area if the line went in and there was one home on it for the next 5 years. Well, now you certainly don't have adequate flow to keep the water moving. If there were 34 homes in it in the next 3 years, I'm a lot less concerned about it. There's a lot of water use. But 1, 2, 3 homes in a 34 subdivision, I get concerned about stale water lines.
Councillor Edmonds.
Well, the other thing that he mentioned, that he wanted all the transformers underground. And I have a real concern about that, because I imagine the water table in that area is pretty high. And if you start putting in transformers underground, and I imagine he's going to want them deep enough that the grass will grow over the top of them, I don't think it's feasible.
Feasibility, I'll say this, I want to say this carefully. Feasibility in his development is less our issue than the long-term maintenance and operation of it. If he wants to pay a ton of dollars to put it in and it works and the system is sound and it has integrity to not get water in it, well, okay. But that's also part of that process, that if we know we're going to have transformers gone bad in a year or 2 or 3 or 4, then we have to consider that as well, for sure.
Okay, Councillor Creed.
I'd just like to speak to the looping of the line specifically right now. I mean, we can talk about the other one as well, but I'm not comfortable with flushing lines because, you know, we charge so much for the water that's treated in our treatment plant. It costs us, you know, a certain amount to treat the water in the treatment plant. When we flush it, that's, let's say, water down the drain. It's money down the drain. I think looping makes the most sense on running that line. I just think that's the way they ought to go with it, is have a loop line so that we're conservative.
I'm seeing no motion on this.
May I have one more comment?
Okay, last comment.
I think that this piece of development is fraught with undisclosed problems. And that we don't know what they are. And what effect is it going to have on the taxpayers of this town down the road? Not today, but 10 years from now or 5 years from now. And I think those problems have got to get on the table before we move on with this particular project.
We're going to go to 7A under the Cardston High School. I'm unable for the first time in 2 council terms, or one as a Westwood School Division member, to go to native grad. Councillor Kronen has agreed to go to native grad. Councillor, would you just maybe make a note of, this is 7C, native honor night is this Thursday, and grand entry will probably start at 6 p.m. I don't know if they'll invite you to do grand entry. I wouldn't doubt it, because as a dignitary they may well do that. When you go there, you're going to want to look for Gary Fox. He will be visiting with the grads, getting them lined up, and so yeah. So if you're there, just maybe by 5:30. So yeah. Now, if we can make sure that the RSVP gets sent first thing in the morning to the high school that Councillor Kronen, and if you are asked to make any comments, public or in visiting with the folks there, would you please pass along my deep regrets for not being able to be in attendance?
Councillor, would your husband be attending with you?
I will invite him.
I'll just RSVP for 2 unless I hear otherwise.
Sure.
Yeah, there is no meal, but there will be refreshments, there will be snacks and whatnot, there will be no sit-down dinner. And that's not the reason I'm not going to be there. Okay, so now we are going to go into 9A, just draw your attention, the town council motion list. Any comments or concerns on that one? 9B is the bylaw animal control report. 9C, Native Liaison Councillor. Let me just mention at this point in time, I had a comment made to me a couple of weeks ago by one of our conscientious business owners in the west part of Main Street between 2nd and 3rd Avenues. And he was extremely concerned about obviously spit on the sidewalks. And I said, that is prohibited in our bylaw. Catching the offender may be another issue. So I hope that maybe we can pass along that comment and concern to our bylaw and our Native Liaison Officer that we need to address those if we can, along with a myriad of other issues that we come to play there. 9D, the development report is there for your scrutiny.
Schow, I have a problem with that report. Jeff, maybe you can turn to it and look at the year. Permits issued in year 2012 and 2011 totals comparison.
That's obviously a mistake that he hasn't
All of a sudden I
updated
thought,
his years.
is that last year's report
No.
or is that a new report?
No, it's new, but it's using last year's template. I'll have it corrected.
I'm sorry.
No, don't apologize.
I'm glad you caught that, Councillor. I'm glad you caught that.
We're only a year behind.
Okay.
I read everything.
9E, you'll notice 9E, there's a letter from an individual that actually is a resident of county. That's not, if I'm mistaken. And Jeff, do you want to speak to that? Just,
Sure. This is just simply for council's attention, only because I wouldn't be surprised if you hear about it. So I just want to make sure council is collectively aware. This is a letter from Bart to Mr. Bevins. We've been having trouble on our irrigation line. Right off level irrigation, it's at such a high pressure, it's blowing out some lines coming down. So we want to install a pressure reducer at the source. When Bart approached Mr. Bevins about installing it off level irrigation, he was quite upset and wasn't agreeable, that he felt we were taking up space he could farm and that could produce for him, and that the vault was going to take up unnecessary space. There's a long history there of an argument over the easement anyway. So what Bart did is he went and talked to the county, and we're planning on right now locating the vault in the road allowance. So it will sit outside of the easement well, I guess it's within the easement, but also within the road allowance in that intersection. So we're going to, one thing that is a byproduct of this is we are leaving a length of that irrigation line exposed to the high pressure, which may cause us some needs for repairs over the years, as it has been for the last, many years. But we'll get that neck down at the road allowance, and from there to all the way down now to Rotary Park, it should bring the pressure of that line down, so we don't blow out any pipes. But just if you're called or you're hit up about it, I just want to give you a little backstory that we did move the vault location to try and appease Mr. Bevins. He did phone Bart this morning as an aside after this and didn't sound very appeased about much. But we're going to potentially right now proceed in the road allowance.
and the county has approved it. You'll note that in the letter, the county has given permission to place the vault in their road allowance.
Can I ask a question? Okay, I can understand the frustration of Mr. Evans, but has he ever proposed anything different?
I'm trying to think, some of you on council may remember, he was here it's been a couple of years now, I think. Feels like it's been maybe a year. Just to discuss access and things like that. But
I remember the story of the access.
yeah.
But that was not part of the problem at that point. So it's just being difficult, or?
Well, again, there's a lot of history here that I'm not prepared
Yeah,
to speak to that
okay.
entire history. And
That's
so
fine.
it
I mean,
culminates
this is
in a number
land, I
of these issues.
understand the problem.
Yeah. There is an easement and there's some debate over the legitimacy of everything in the easement,
Yeah, I mean,
is the issue.
you can call it this land.
Yeah.
Okay, if we can move then into number 11, correspondence. I think I'm safe in saying that this is something that council would support. So the chair would entertain a motion that June 3rd to 9th be proclaimed Seniors Week. Councillor Court so moves. Any discussion on that? We're pretty choosy about, we could probably declare something special every week, you know, but this is something that I think is really meritorious.
Yes. So are we
The
going?
councillor moves that we, that the mayor proclaim June 3rd to 9th, Seniors Week. Councillor Kronen.
So are we going to have a poster or
They
something?
will do as they choose.
But even here at the door, the same thing as we did with the worker compensation declaration for people who were hurt.
Will we,
Are we
will we?
going to have a
have
pamphlet or
something?
something we can put on the front?
We'll talk with the Seniors Advisory Council and see what they can provide us with. They can get us some.
Yeah, because if we declare as well
Information.
something positive.
No, there's a lot of things out there that will fall right into this
Yeah,
because
I know.
they
That
certainly,
1 week of activities.
they do lots of things. They'll probably even invite me for breakfast up at the Chinook Lodge.
Yeah.
Which is I am a senior after all. So I'll take that vote. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you very much. In the same vein, similar vein, Alberta Recreation and Sports Development Division of the Tourism, Parks and Recreation Branch are inviting participation in the 2013 Energize Workshop. Now, that is down the road after the election, and so I'm guessing that we should probably leave that, now they're taking nominations with deadline of June the 21st. I guess we should maybe have a look at that. Jeff, would you be able to take a minute looking over the criteria and see if it would be in order that we nominate somebody? I'm trying to think of who other than my father was recognized and went to that and received an award. There's a few in the community that have received that. So maybe just take a look at that and see. It's Recreation Volunteer Recognition Awards. So if we can find somebody in there that justifiably, or if council has any names to recommend, it's always nice to draw the recognition for our community, for specific individuals in the community to, not that they're seeking recognition, but I think it's good if we can find suitable candidates to be nominated to receive recognition.
I mean, are you thinking even of people who have been coaches and have helped youth over the years? Is that something like this, you thinking that line, or something a little bit more encompassing?
Well, it can involve a lot of things. It talks about recreation board members, administrators, people who have really paid their dues in volunteering in the community. Councillor Smith?
I was just going to say, maybe instead of trying to think of names on the spot, maybe we can just come up with names, submit them to
Send them,
administration,
yeah.
and then come back maybe next council meeting.
Well, at any point,
Yeah.
any name that you
Sure.
feel like you want to mention, if you've got some now, we'll take it. I'm not even suggesting that this issue be dead and buried as of 6:30 tonight. I'm saying, just think of people, and if there's some names, bring them forward. We have until the 21st of June for submissions, and it probably wouldn't hurt to have those submissions presented, say, by the 28th meeting. That would give administration time to prepare those nominations. Because there's a form with award criteria and completion tips, careful completion tips to assure the nominee is given full credit for volunteer work contributed. And if you're interested, I'm sure Jeff can make available to you the award criteria, so you can give some thought to who, if you have come up with a name or two, to do that. Okay, I need a motion, please.
I'll make a motion to go with
Move to go in camera by Councillor Smith. Any discussion on that? I will call the question. All in favor, we will go in camera. I want to thank the media for being here. And probably a good time, if we need to take a pause that refreshes, now would be the time to do it.